Indeed. In fact, we started this study a couple of years back, 3 years back actually. And the early work that we were doing with various organizations, we could start seeing that there is a difference in the way manufacturing organizations operate versus the services. And the difference was specifically in the way leaders manage their business. So we studied something like 64 organizations and over 1,600 leaders. And we could see the pattern was so very different. So one statistic that you quoted, that 73% of the leaders create demotivating environment. What was even more stark is only 19% of leaders operating in manufacturing are creating performance-linked and are driving performance kind of a climate, as different from a 31% of equivalent services guys. What that really means is that there is some opportunity that the manufacturing leaders have in order to change the way they drive performance in organizations. Well, we look at the problem from two lenses. One is what can organization do, and two is what can leaders do. And one would argue that they are part of the same system. However, we see distinct interventions needed at both the levels. So first, for the organization point of view, is to recognize that the key lever to hit at to drive change is the unit head. The head of manufacturing is a very important role. It's typically occupied by men in India, which I think on its own is a different opportunity. But certainly, how do we equip as an organization, equip that unit head, the head of that manufacturing, to run the unit differently? The second aspect is the leader themselves, which is the unit head and the people reporting into him. How can they act differently than what they are doing? So the changes that we are recommending is, one, at the organization level, is drive a leadership behavior where the decision making is shared. The accountabilities for running that manufacturing unit is shared, not just by unit head and the direct reports of that. What that would do is create the lightness of the shoulders of the unit head, who is currently responsible for everything that there is, to have a bunch of people reporting into him take on equivalent responsibilities. So that's the one direct shift the organization can do, and reward those behaviors for that. On the leaders' side, help the leaders to learn how can they step back and engage those direct people or people reporting into them directly by helping them think beyond the functional knowledge they have. So typically these guys would be manufacturing head or maintenance head, HR head and so on. How do you get these guys to think not only their functional pieces, but think business, think responsibility for the unit head financial and business success, and do that by engaging them to think about where is the vision of that unit, where is the unit vision of the organization, what are the opportunities this unit has to create a competitive edge amongst other competitors that they are operating in. And then to do all of this, the leader has to start operating from not directive behavior, what we call as a visionary behavior, participative behavior, coaching behavior. So that's a huge shift. So coach both the manufacturing leaders as well as organization to drive these two interventions. Well, the way to look at manufacturing organizations is different from service. Manufacturing is a lot about getting consistency in the process. They hate variations. They've been writing quality manuals to make sure the Six Sigma and all of those quality processes are practiced where no variation is actually accepted. Now, typically leaders managing in these environments, their response to managing variances around the output leads them to actually think about driving consistency by telling people following the process, and which is why they end up using these short-term styles. Now those work really well for a systematic and simple procedures like lift this, drop this, push this, and those kind of instructions. But whenever you want people to do problem solving, the instructions comes in the way, which is why a directive, when you tell the person, tell your team members saying, go and improve the productivity of this by 5%, that's problem solving. A directive behavior at that time actually leaves the other person feeling very scared, and that's another thing that you would find. The corresponding feeling in the minds of the people led by these leaders is fear. Now, fear is not the best mind frame for leaders to solve problems. And that's the issue. How can we teach these leaders to step back and say, it's fine to give instructions when you're in crisis. take the pail of bucket and actually throw water on the fire is a fine instructions if it's crisis. But solving a problem may not work that way. What you may find better is how do you, as a leader, engage the heart and mind of your team and give them the big picture of saying, hey, this is what you want to solve this problem, such that this problem can be never repeated again in this organization, and let the people figure out how to solve that problem. Coach them, guide them, mentor them, ask them great questions. And that's what we've seen is a need for the leaders to do, rather than getting stuck with trying to be responsible for solving all the kind of problems themselves. Well, action or taking action is one such quality, and which is a great quality to have. But action without thought is the problem. And the focus is that therefore is how can these leaders step back and think about what they are solving or what they are acting upon, and then act with speed. So our belief is that the part that we have to help these leaders is to be able to step back and think about the problem and then act from it. What we've seen is that the leaders in manufacturing in particular find it difficult to step back. They have a very low self-awareness score. So we have measured that, and you would see this data that we have published, that they possess almost negligible self-awareness, which is the capacity for them to step back and examine their own emotion, examine what is the environment that is impacting them, and take the right calls basis of that. So they find it difficult to do. So manufacturing leaders, the root cause of why they go into action without thinking is really that they have very low self-awareness. Clearly. So our research has shown that 30% of the business results is because of the organization climate that the leaders create, or said differently, 30% of the business results that the leaders produce is because how their team feels about working with them, which is a great leverage if you think about it. We've seen that leaders are unable to drive that consistent environment of positive climate. They create because they have a preference for using directive behavior. They tend to create a very fearsome or an environment where people constantly fear to do anything which is the leaders may not approve of. They're not applying their own mind. Many a time they're not bringing their heart and soul into these. Having said that, we did mention to you that 73% create a demotivating, but there are 19 who are creating very, very positive climate. Now, if you study them, what are they doing differently? What they are doing differently is they're engaging teams. They're engaging them in thinking about the problem statement differently. They're engaging them to see how can those leaders reporting into the unit head can actually find their own solutions of it, and then provide them support by way of coaching or mentoring to help these teams solve. And at the end of it, the leaders and the team members come out feeling stronger than what they are doing currently. So we know there is an evidence of what it takes for leaders to create a high-performing climate, by creating the right climate. Oh, absolutely. And helping leaders improve their awareness about their own emotions to see how is their behavior affecting performance is the core of the shift that we need to make. And what that would do is help them appreciate the needs and the goals of the team members reporting into them, so that they can tune into them and actually help these people feel far more engaged and involved in the problem solving. You would know on a separate note that less and less people want to be engineers, want to be on the shop floor. They don't want to be involved in the manufacturing process. And partly we think is also because of the leaders have created a very regimented environment where youngsters don't find convenient and energizing to be part of. So a self-aware leader would be able to tune in to the needs of the people coming at different levels, engage them, and actually use their engagement to solve business problems and as well grow that unit. We are immensely concerned about it, and we have formulated an organization or a team which is really about Make in India cell for leadership development. The focus of this cell is really to work at three levels. One is the organizations themselves. So how can the manufacturing organizations know what levers they have to improve the leadership capacity of their organization so that it directly impacts the productivity they create. The second is the investors themselves. How can we bring to the investors who are investing into these organizations the insights, the cultural insights, as well as the insights about what does it take really to improve performance of the units that they are investing in, so that they can realize a better returns on their money. And third, of course, directly helping the leaders who are in the manufacturing state to actually help them find a way to move from a leadership style which is largely bent on learning the old way of managing to actually moving to a way that they are engaging people and driving collaboration of teams and creating better results. Oh, it's a fabulous initiative from the government to actually improve the skills at the bottom end of the pyramid, and we really laud those efforts. We believe that in combination with the initiative that the government has initiated around driving entrepreneurialism across the country, this would be a great way to run the initiative. What we see perhaps what is missing is the opportunity for the country to create capacities of leaders who can absorb the capacity that is created by government by having more and more people skilled in this area. Said differently, government's initiative is going to improve lots of skills around masonry, carpentry, and telephone repair and all of that, and in tons literally. But where is the capacity of the organization to use more and more of them? That can only happen when the organizations are actually growing rapidly, right? And who is going to help them grow is the leaders in these organizations. So entrepreneurs invest money, but the leaders within these organizations have to find a way to create capacity so that they can absorb these new skills being created by the government. And we think that's an opportunity for the government to invest in. And we do know that leaders in manufacturing have a challenge, as we spoke a bit earlier. So how can government take hand in hand the initiative around improving leadership development of the manufacturing leader so that they can create the capacities to absorb these new skills created through Make in India campaign. Well, I actually have very simple one do and one don't. One is value people. Value people who are reporting into you, value their views, their thoughts. Remember that they are the people who will actually help come into in your seat and actually grow the organization. So value them. Two is stop using a directive behavior. Find a way to engage their ideas, engage the people and the team as to what are the things they are thinking about, and then coach them in solving those. So these are my do and my don't.